how do you actually improve your life without drowning in the noise?
Right, because there is so much advice out there.
Oh, absolutely. Wake up at 4 a.m., drink this green smoothie, meditate for 3 hours a day. It's exhausting. We need the signal and the noise. So let's start with the foundation, the architecture of self.
It begins with a concept that, frankly, makes a lot of people roll their eyes or get immediately defensive: responsibility. The source text actually calls it the starting line.
Yeah, responsibility is a really loaded word.
Yeah.
It usually feels like a burden. Like, oh, great, it's my fault the car broke down, or it's my fault the project failed. It just feels heavy.
That is the most common reaction. But before you tune out, look at the margin note on the Harris document. Right next to a paragraph about accountability, there's a circle in ink and this handwritten question: where am I giving my power away?
Where am I giving my power away? Man, that hits differently than someone just telling you to take responsibility.
It changes the physics of the situation entirely. Usually, when we blame the economy or a difficult boss or our upbringing for our unhappiness, we feel justified. We think we're just stating facts.
Right, we're just explaining the reality of our situation.
Exactly. But this note suggests that when you do that, you aren't just complaining. You are actively handing over your agency. You are voluntarily getting into the passenger seat of your own life.
Which is a terrifying place to be. Because if my unhappiness is caused by some external factor X and X is totally out of my control, then I'm stuck. I'm helpless until X magically changes. But if I pause and ask, where did I give my power to X? Suddenly I have a lever to pull. I can do something about it.
Yes, it transforms you from a victim of circumstance into a player in the game. It's not about blaming yourself for bad luck. It's about claiming the authority to respond to it. And once you're back in the driver's seat, you need a steering mechanism. That brings us to the second pillar of this architecture, which is discipline.
Okay, be honest.
Yeah.
When I say the word discipline,
Right.
what is the very first image that pops into your head?
Oh, a drill sergeant screaming. Or maybe a monk waking up on a freezing stone floor at dawn. It feels like punishment. It feels like total deprivation.
Totally. It's the anti-fun police. But the source material here reframes discipline in a way I had never thought about before. It defines it as alignment. It says discipline is simply the art of doing what you said you were going to do.
And there is another handwritten note here from Harris that connects this to psychology beautifully. It says, consistency builds trust with yourself.
I really think that's the key inside of this entire section.
Yeah.
Self-trust. We worry constantly about whether other people trust us, our bosses or our partners. But we so rarely stop to ask, do I actually trust me?
Think about it this way. If you had a friend who promised to meet you for coffee every Tuesday and they flaked on you every single week for a year, would you still trust them?
Absolutely not. I'd stop inviting them anywhere.
But we do that to ourselves all the time. I'll go to the gym tomorrow. I'll start writing that book this weekend. And then we don't. We break those little micro promises. Over time, you are literally training your brain to believe that your word is garbage. You're teaching yourself that you are unreliable.
That is heavy. You're gaslighting yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
So how do we fix that? Because if the trust is already broken, you can't just snap your fingers and suddenly be disciplined.
This connects directly to the scientific side of our stack today. Lesson number 4 in the 12 lessons is focus on small, positive choices. This is where we get into the biology of neuroplasticity.
Let's unpack that term, because neuroplasticity gets thrown around a lot in self-help circles. What is actually happening inside the brain?
Think of your brain like a dense, overgrown forest. Every time you think a thought or perform an action, you are hacking a trail through that forest. The first time is incredibly hard. You're dealing with brambles and fallen logs. But if you walk that exact same path every single day, the undergrowth dies back, the path widens, eventually becomes a paved highway. That is neuroplasticity. The phrase in neuroscience is neurons that fire together wire together.
So relying purely on willpower is like trying to bushwhack a brand new path through the jungle every single morning. But a habit is just hopping on the highway you already built.
Precisely. And the huge mistake we make is trying to build a 6-lane superhighway overnight. The source suggests the 1% improvement rule. You don't need a grand gesture. You just need to clear one single branch today.
So practically speaking, how do we start clearing that path without getting totally overwhelmed?
You piggyback. The source suggests attaching a new habit to an old, firmly established one. It's called habit stacking. If you want to stretch your muscles more, commit to doing it immediately after you brush your teeth. You're hacking your brain's existing operating system, that brushing teeth highway, and just adding a little side road to it.
I really like that. It's about clever design rather
Yes.
than sheer force of will. But you know, even with good habits, you can still sabotage yourself if the underlying software is buggy. We have to talk about belief.
Yes, this is the third part of our self-architecture. The Harris text emphasizes that belief shapes behavior. What we believe about ourselves subtly determines what we will even attempt to do. And here's the margin note that completely stopped me in my tracks. Would I try differently if I believed I couldn't fail?
That is the big aha moment right there.
Yeah.
Notice it doesn't ask what would I do. It specifically asks how would I try.
There is a massive difference. It's about the quality of the effort. If you walk into a room convinced you're going to be rejected, your body language is closed off, your voice is tight, you inadvertently create the exact rejection you fear. But if you knew you absolutely couldn't fail,
You'd be loose, you'd be playful, you'd be significantly more creative because you aren't spending all your energy protecting your ego. You're just freely exploring the problem.
it shifts you from a defensive posture to an offensive one. It's not about blind toxic optimism, it's the willingness to act fully despite the uncertainty.
So we've built the architecture of the self. We have agency, discipline, and a bold mindset. But obviously we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a complex web of other people. This brings us to the second movement today, the tapestry of connection. I was looking at the 12 lesson source, and lesson number 1 wasn't about productivity or personal finance. It was prioritize strong relationships.
And that is backed by some incredibly heavy data. The document alludes to longitudinal studies, almost certainly the famous Harvard Grant study, which tracked men for nearly 80 years. They looked at literally everything, their cholesterol levels, their bank accounts, their IQ scores, and the conclusion was undeniable.
What was the absolute primary predictor for a good life?
The quality of their social connections, it was a vastly better predictor of long-term health and happiness than genetics or money or fame combined. Loneliness kills you as slowly and surely as smoking or alcoholism.
That is staggering when you think about it. We spend 40 hours a week chasing the bank account and maybe 40 minutes truly nurturing deep friendships. It's a complete investment mismatch.
It really is. And the actionable steps provided here are deceptively simple, yet we so rarely do them. One is active listening, but the source is extremely specific. It's not just hewing the words while you formulate your brilliant response in your head.
Or while you subtly glance at your phone under the table.
Exactly. It's putting the phone completely away, turning your whole physical body toward the person. In our current attention economy, giving someone your undivided focus is a radical act of love. It's essentially saying, you are more important to me than the entire internet right now.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. It is incredibly hard to be a good active listener when you are internally screaming with stress. If you're burning out and your mind is racing, you just don't have the bandwidth for deep connection. You just want to retreat into a cave.
That is the crucial link right there. You cannot pour from an empty cup. This is why the sources pivot heavily to managing the inner emotional world. They offer a very specific tool here, and I'm so glad they did, because just telling someone to relax is terrible advice. They give a breathing technique.
Yeah.
Inhale for 4 seconds and exhale for 6 seconds.
I actually see that specific ratio a lot. Why the longer exhale? Is that just an arbitrary number, or is there actual biology behind it?
Oh, it's pure biology. It has to do with your vagus nerve. When you inhale, your heart rate speeds up slightly. That's connected to your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight gas pedal. But when you exhale, your heart rate naturally slows down. That engages the parasympathetic system, which is the rest and digest mode.
Okay, so by making the exhale mathematically longer than the inhale, you are forcing your body to literally slow down.
You are hacking your own hardware. You are physically sending a chemical signal up to your brain saying, we are safe. You can power down the defenses now. Is a literal override switch for stress.
I love that. It's hardware, not just software. But we also really need to talk about the mental trap that creates all that stress in the first place. Perfectionism. The source explicitly says we need to intentionally move from perfection to good enough.
And I can hear every single high achiever listening to this cringing right now. Good enough sounds terrible. It sounds like pure mediocrity. It sounds like settling.
Right, they're thinking I didn't get to where I am by settling for good enough. I grind, I push.
But here is the nuance we have to catch. Perfectionism is brittle. If you demand 100% perfection all the time, one single mistake shatters you completely. It creates massive paralysis. Good enough isn't about arbitrarily lowering your standards of quality. It's about sustainability. It's accepting that you are a flawed human being, you will stumble, and having the elasticity to bounce back. Perfectionism causes anxiety, but acceptance causes growth.
That reminds me of the helper's high mentioned in the compassion section of the text. We usually think kindness is purely for the benefit of other people, but the source points out that it drastically boosts our own well-being.
It does. Evolution has literally wired us to feel good when we help the tribe. Doing a kind act releases oxytocin and dopamine. So if you're feeling totally stuck in your own head, one of the absolute fastest ways out is to do a small kindness for someone else. It immediately pulls you out of the me-centered universe.
And to keep that resilience high, we have the tool of gratitude. Lesson number 2 is practice daily gratitude. Now, I know everyone talks about gratitude journals. It feels a little bit cliche at this point, but the source explains the actual mechanism behind it, which I found fascinating.
It's all about rewiring attention. Our brains are naturally like Velcro for negativity and Teflon for positivity. We are highly evolved to spot threats, the tiger hiding in the bush. We aren't evolved to stare at a beautiful sunset and remember it forever. Gratitude is a manual override of that survival instinct.
So you have to actively force the system to record the good stuff.
Exactly. The routine suggested is very simple. Write down 3 things you are grateful for every evening. Or when a genuinely good moment happens, pause and consciously savor it for 10 to 15 seconds.
That 15-second savoring is the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Usually something wonderful happens, and we're already moving on to the next problem on the list. We don't let it land.
We let it slip right off the Teflon. You have to actively hold it in your mind until it sticks to the Velcro.
So we have the self, which is disciplined and responsible. We have connection rooted in kindness and emotional regulation. Now we need to look at the trajectory. Where is this all actually going? This brings us to our third segment today, the narrative of growth.
This is all about purpose and persistence. The 12 lessons list talks about cultivating meaning and purpose. It says that having goals that align with your core values like learning or family or contribution provides massive resilience. But let's go back to the Harris document and those margin notes, because there is a scribbled note here that completely reframes the entire idea of setting goals.
Oh, this was the one right next to the section on success, right?
Yes. Harris wrote, "Who am I becoming while I'm chasing this?"
Who am I becoming while I'm chasing this? Wow, that shifts the focus entirely. Usually we only look at the prize, the promotion, the house, the big award. We so rarely stop to look at the person we turn into during the pursuit.
Exactly. You can get the promotion, but if you became paranoid and anxious and cutthroat to get it, was it actually a success? This single note shifts success from a final destination to an ongoing transformation. And that transformation requires the other big P word in this section, which is persistence.
Which is something we hear a lot. Never give up, keep pushing.
Mhm.
But the margin note adds a really profound twist. What does it say again?
The note reads, "Stay longer than your doubt."
Stay longer than your doubt.
It feels like advice from a very wise future version of yourself, doesn't it? It completely acknowledges that doubt is going to show up. It's inevitable. It doesn't say banish your doubt. It doesn't say you have to be fearless.
It totally normalizes the doubt. It says, okay, the doubt is here. It's sitting on the couch in my brain. I'm just going to keep working until it gets bored and finally leaves.
Precisely. Doubt is just a temporary visitor. But perseverance decides who actually owns the house. And while you are out there persisting, you have to actually be there. This touches on lesson 7. Practice mindful, present moment living.
This is the ultimate antidote to worrying about the past or the future. The source says that living fully in the now improves life satisfaction drastically. And the fix isn't necessarily meditating on a mountaintop for an hour a day. It's simply single tasking.
Yes. Do one single thing at a time. If you're walking outside, just walk. Notice the sensation of your feet hitting the ground. If you're eating, just eat. Actually taste the food. It sounds so incredibly simple, but how often do we actually do it?
Almost never. I'm usually eating lunch while aggressively checking email and listening to the news. Present company excluded, of course.
We're constant time travelers. We're always living in the past, replaying some awkward mistake, or we're in the future worrying about a meeting that hasn't happened yet. The present moment is the only place life actually happens.
And finally, to keep this narrative of growth going over a lifetime, we have the final lesson: learn continuously and adapt.
The source mentions the PERMA framework from positive psychology here. That stands for positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. The engagement part is really crucial here. It's all about flow.
Flow state, being so completely absorbed in something challenging that time just disappears.
Right. And you only get that through continuous learning and stretching yourself. If you stop learning, you become mentally brittle. Life inevitably changes and you just snap. If you keep learning, whether it's a new language, a new technical skill, or just reading a really difficult book, you stay adaptable. You keep that neuroplastic forest young and alive.
So when you step back and look at all of this together, the 12 hard lessons in the Intimate Harris Notes, it's not just a random checklist of do this and don't do that.
No, it's a comprehensive system. It's an ecosystem for living. You have the roots, which are your responsibility and your discipline. You have the soil, which is your relationships and your emotional health. And you have the sunlight you're reaching for, which is your purpose and your continued growth.
And what I really love is that it perfectly merges the internal and the external worlds. The scientific list tells us what to do. Sleep, exercise, connect. The Harris Margin Notes tell us how to be accountable, persistent, mindful of who we are becoming.
It reminds me of the final quote from the Harris text regarding the true nature of success. It really brings all of these threads together.
Go ahead and read it for us.
It says, external milestones matter, but inner growth determines whether success feels fulfilling.
That really sums it all up. You can hit every single target on the chart. You can get the corner office and the money. But if you haven't done the quiet inner work, it's just going to feel completely hollow. You'll get to the top of the mountain and realize you're just cold and alone.
So here's our challenge to you listening right now. We absolutely do not want you to try and overhaul your entire life by tomorrow morning. That completely violates the 1% improvement rule we just talked about.
Right. Please don't be the person who tries to change everything at once and inevitably burns out by Tuesday. We've all been that person at some point. It's not fun.
Instead, pick just one single margin note. Maybe it's, where am I giving my power away? Just ask yourself that when you get frustrated in traffic today. Or maybe pick one practical habit, like the 4-second inhale, 6-second exhale breathing technique.
Or maybe it's just putting your phone away and sending one text to a friend to say, I appreciate you. Just one thing. Focus on that this week. See how it subtly shifts the architecture of your day.
Because as our sources reminded us, the quality of your life grows through intention, not chance. It's the small, consistent choices that slowly build the life you actually want to live.
And you know, before we close the library doors today, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at how someone named Harris scribbled their own truths in the margins of another text. It makes you realize that any time you consume advice, whether it's a book, a lecture, or even this deep dive, the real work isn't in just accepting the printed text.
It's in the argument.
Exactly. The most important story is the one you are writing in the margins of your own life. What are you questioning? Where are you pushing back? True growth requires a little bit of rebellion against the script you've been handed. So next time you read a piece of life advice, ask yourself, what am I writing in my margins today?
I love that.
Thank you for joining us in the library today. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring these timeless tales of growth with you.
Until next time, take care of your story.
And stay curious. Goodbye, everyone.
Subscribe to the Timeless Tales podcast. Your stories, your time.